Hello, my beautiful faces. If you are new here, I am Francia Eileen, and this is my channel, Let's Talk About It Love. So today I have a special topic that I want to get into, and that is basically one of the most important human skills that we will develop, starting from a very young child trying to make sense of things, that it lingers onto our adult life, and that is asking why. That is probably one of the most important skills that we learn cognitively and also socially because it goes past just getting answered. Just like kids, it helps us understand ourselves, other people in the world. Are you someone who constantly asks why? Are you someone who tends to not really question things? And if you're not, like, when did you stop? Were you a child that always was like, I have to question this or I have to question that? Or were you someone that kind of just things were just what they were and you didn't really question too much? You were told not to question, but it's okay because we're going to dive into all that and how it develops when we are a young child down to when we are an adult. So without further ado, let's talk about it, love. Starts in our early child development. So from the early months of 12 months to about 18 months, kids or children, they are usually one words usually to express curiosity, like mama, daddy, ball, or they'll use gestures like pointing or looking, to where they're kind of feeling their curiosity of what is what. Then from about 18 to 24 months, children start to develop using their language more. So they're now using two words to express their curiosity. What's that? Where's mama? Where's daddy? And also to why? 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 Why mommy? Why daddy? And then from around 2 to 3 years old, they're generally now starting to question everything. Like everything is a question. That's how they communicate, and that's when the real why questions start to arise. Like the real why questions will be a big part of their vocabulary and their language, trying to just make sense of cause and effect. Parents know, trust me, coming from one, I know about this. I'm in the thick of it right now. But you get that firing why. You may have just answered the question 3 times and it's just why again to your response. And that's just a child's way of logically trying to make sense, reasoning behind what you're telling them or what your response is to their why question. And this allows them to build social connections. Also, too, kids know they're realizing like this is how I'm able to engage an older adult by asking questions, asking why. They're now starting to understand and piece together how the rules work in the world. And that's honestly very important, being that we are social beings. And it really just starts from before we can even comprehend that that's why we're doing it. Amazing, right? How the human brain works. And it also develops their curiosity and understanding of people. They begin to see people have different thoughts and views and reasonings as well. It helps them make sense of the rules that are said to be and the reasoning for it as well, which is such an essential part of early childhood development because it allows them to critically think, also to build cognitively and socially with others in order to understand cause and effect. I do this and this is what happens. And when I say critically think, I'm talking about problem solving, identify patterns, and testing ideas, which allows for active exploration of right and wrong as well. And this kind of shifts from that 12 months to about 3. So let's just say from 1 to 3, where they're, instead of passively listening, they're actually being active knowledge seekers. Like they are asking, well, you're telling me this, but why this? Why do I need to eat my food? Why can I not play on the iPad? Why do you have to leave? Questions like that. So let's get into how adults typically respond when it comes to child's why questions. So it can range anywhere from adults responding in an encouraging manner, kind of neutral, situational, and then you have discouraging responses. So some encouraging responses could be using age appropriate language when it comes to just vocabulary, situations, things that they're familiar with in order to answer their why questions. And I know for me, like that's something that I've struggled with my daughter, is kind of like dumbing down my explanation for her to be able to comprehend, because I've noticed with my younger siblings, mind you, I have a 8 and oh no, she's 9 now. I have a 9-year-old and an 11-year-old sister, and sometimes when they ask me why questions and I explain, like they're still even more confused, or the answer is not clear because I'm not using language, verbiage, or even just vocabulary that they are connecting with or able to comprehend. Also, too, asking questions that encourage critical thinking, or, to think for themselves, like, well, what do you think? Another one is finding out the answer together. Parents and even adults of authority admitting to the child that they don't know the answer. So they use that as a learning opportunity for both of them and seeking the answers together. Also, too, praising the fact that, wow, like you're asking about this. That was a good question. While also, too, asking follow-up questions. Again, that just aids for a child to be able to think forward past your explanation or your response. And using examples and demonstrations as well is what encourages a child's curiosity, and also to a safe place for them to come to you or to whoever to be able to ask certain questions. So some neutral and situational responses could be, if I know there's times, I'm gonna definitely speak for me, but I know like I've experienced this in my childhood, and I'm sure that other parents, you find yourself in a situation where it's just like, okay, we're rushing out the door, and your child's sitting there saying, well, why do I have to wear shoes? Because we cannot go outside without shoes. Then it's just like, well, why? And then, it's sometimes kind of like, okay, well, let's go. Like, I don't have time to answer these questions right now. Like, let's go. That's kind of where I fall into sometimes. So, like, I'll explain later. Also, too, if a question is kind of, I guess, not age appropriate, or you find yourself not being able to explain something that is probably not an age appropriate topic, for a child, but you don't know how to explain it, you may redirect the conversation, or if it's a topic that's not really like appropriate, or I guess not so much positive. I guess you don't really see the benefits of exploring more into said question or curiosity. You may redirect the conversation that's in a more age appropriate, and also too admitting that you just don't know. Like sometimes it's just like, I don't know. And also to exhaustion and burnout, or just having a long day. Like the last thing some parents want to do, or some teachers want to do, is just continue to answer questions of a child. So that's some like neutral, situational. And then there's like discouraging responses that can make a child feel like, okay, like I'm not seen, I don't feel heard, I don't feel safe to ask questions, especially when the responses are met with, and I'm going to name 4, and I definitely grew up on hearing 3 out of the 4 for sure, and some of y'all probably definitely heard 1, 2, 3, or maybe all of them, but there's just some common ones that definitely were told to me as I was growing up, and the number one, and this is one that I gotta like condition myself like not to be so much of, because I said so. As a parent now, it's because I said so. Some things really don't need to be explained. However, for the purpose of not being so dismissive or being discouraging, and I want, my child to feel like she could come to me, and not even just my child, but maybe her peers or even my sisters, my young cousins to come to me, and even to I encourage for new parents and parents of kids of young children, steer away from like that always being the automatic response because I said so. Don't get me wrong, sometimes that needs to be said because sometimes things are situational. Like there's a moments where it's just like you need to listen right now and I'll explain later. Example could be have your flat iron or your curling iron on the counter and you like see your child going towards it or wanting to be curious and touch it, and it's just like, no, don't touch it. Why, mommy? Because I said so. Don't touch it, it's hot. Like it could be just like that's my response now because I don't want you to touch it. But then it's like, okay, catching yourself to explain. Don't ask so many questions. That could be for a child that just consistently, some kids just genuinely love to ask questions, or just so curious, like they have a question for everything to every response. Don't ask so many questions because I said so, and just do it. Definitely those three right there. Those responses literally made my childhood. Yeah, no explanation, just do it because I said so. You're asking to be questions. And you'll understand when you get older. I feel like all four of those are just the like, hush, do it because I said so, which I'm very surprised how I'm a very curious person now. But anyways, and also too, when they ask a question out of curiosity and they may feel shame or being dismissed, especially when it's met with responses of like, oh, that was a silly question, or that was a stupid question, like why would you ask that? That could definitely be very discouraging for a young child when it comes to their curiosity, especially coming to an older adult as well. Being irritated or annoyed, the billions of whys. Again, I am not a saint when it comes to sometimes not meeting my child with encouragement when it comes to, or just any child, honestly, with encouraging responses all the time. I definitely sometimes fall into being discouraging. Or two, when a child feels that if they question authority or they question whatever rules they're being told or whatever command or why they're supposed to be doing said thing, and if they question it, if they feel like it's being met with like a punishment or a critique because you shouldn't question adults, constant pattern of that could definitely hinder a child's development when it comes to being curious and asking questions. So again, like I said, responses can range from encouraging, neutral, or situational, and discouraging. So with that being said, what happens when there is a constant pattern of not being able to express curiosity or feel like you're in a safe place to do so? The developmental concerns arise when a dismissive and discouraging response is usually the default communication style, which then leaves room for explanation, discussion, and also curiosity. When a child feels like that wasn't fulfilled, they're still unclear, they didn't get the proper clarification, communication is consistently just dismissive, it can over time shape a child's psycho development, and also which bleeds into how they are socially. So when I say psychological development, that comes with how they process their emotions, how they cognitively think, and also to certain behaviors as well. And socially, that's how they show up in school, how they are in their households, how they treat their siblings, other peers, and also to authority. So we are going to explore some psychological developments and what are the psychological effects of asking why, and how that helps our brain develop not only from young child, but also to how does that carry over into our adulthood. So we're going to break down some psychological effects that asking why has on us, and the pros and the cons of implementing curiosity, and when we don't implement curiosity, and how that shows up psychologically. So the psychological aspects of why asking why matters, it shows up in the individual mind, and most importantly too, to our self-growth and how we self-reflect of our own lives, our upbringing, our development when it comes to learning, behavior and our emotions and how that affects other people. It develops our critical thinking, not only from young child, but it just continues to allow us to question the reasons of why things are the way they are and why it is what it is. It allows us to analyze information instead of just accepting information for what it is. It strengthens our problem solving skills and also to habits that we develop, which then can bring behaviors that were unconscious to the conscious mind. For example, self-reflecting questions. Why do I keep seeing the same patterns show up? It also to improve our emotional regulation. It allows us to respond with thought instead of reacting impulsively. It also to helps us discover our values, our beliefs, set goals, our purpose instead of just adopting others' believe. And we all know a big part of personal growth is learning from previous mistakes and being able to reflect on past mistakes that you have made and answer why that mistake was even made, which is a skill that allows us to continue to grow throughout life. You don't want to be stagnant and just not feel like you're growing because you're unable to ask yourself why. The why is what's going to propel you forward in order to get past whatever rut you feel like you're in, to even problem solve, to move forward. That right there encourages lifelong learning. Curiosity fuels creativity. Also to innovation, that's how inventions get made that are big contributions to society. And also to scientific and spiritual discovery as well. You know, we can't talk about the psychological part of a topic without then implementing the sociological part. So now we're going to touch on the sociological aspects of why asking why is so important. This will show up in relationships, culture, institutions like school and work, and also to overall in society. And this starts again from when you are with your immediate family, whoever is your guardian, whoever is raising you. Our family socialize children through their responses. That allows us from young, continuing to go through the world, to understand social norms, how to have respect for authority. And it begins as early as 1 year old. Understand different perspectives, deeper conversations when we talk with one another, to have a more effective relationship and also to conversation. It encourages healthy relationships. So when we are minimizing confrontations and understandings because we're able to explore why, or we're able to answer questions, it definitely can encourage healthy relationships because it promotes empathy skills. When you're able to put yourself in someone else's shoes because of asking why, it allows you to become more empathetic and allow you to put yourself in someone else's shoes instead of assuming that that's why it is what it is. When you ask why instead of assuming, you're able to then, understand it from a different perspective. This is a good one. In a social setting is it allows us to challenge unfair systems. Throughout history, social progress happens when you have someone or a group of people questioning and asking, why is that law what it is? Has this always been done this way? Those are some of the questions that are asked when it comes to, how some of the biggest social progress when it comes to civil rights movement, slavery, women's rights, the American culture, how all that has been shaped and developed in society just by asking questions. What can we do to change and be more inclusive, to be better humans? Just the mix of cultures as well. Technology, we're able to connect more now than ever because people who usually question things and ask why, they're able to evaluate social expectations before accepting them, especially too when a lot of social norms reward conformity. That's what kind of perpetuates what a norm is or what is considered to be a norm. And it's important too for societies to have people like that, those groups of people, that person who is going to ask why, who's going to spark an uncomfortable conversation or an unpopular opinion. If we're not able to address things, then how are we changing? How are we growing as individual or societal whole? To continue to stay informed, vote with thought and intention instead of just participating in things you don't know that's going on. Participate in our community. Also to hold authority figures that we grew up with, like our parents or people of authority that were in our lives, our teachers, law enforcement, political leaders, accountable. So what are some lifelong consequences that bleed into our adult life when we don't ask why? When our curiosity is either hindered by burnout, exhaustion, what is the psychological implications when it comes to like how we emotionally deal with things, our behavior, also to the social part of it. What are the lifelong complications socially for us? And so we're about to get into that, and many reasons why adults don't ask themselves why or just don't express their curiosity. It's a combination of psychological, social, and practical factors, honestly. And this could come from just the fear of discovering uncomfortable truths about ourselves or even another person, which we can be avoiding the difficult emotions that arise from that, which can be, guilt, shame, regret, embarrassment. Those things we don't naturally want to feel. How do we not feel them? We avoid it. And how do we avoid it? We don't ask either ourselves why, or we don't ask others why. This is how people stay in the same job for a long time, relationships. Also, that's just who I am, which then it hinders your ability to make change within yourself. We're protecting our ego because asking why can threaten one's identity. We always want to protect our self-esteem, and sometimes those uncomfortable whys can have an effect on how we view ourselves, our identity, and also to our self-esteem. Cognitive dissonance too. It's avoiding questions that can challenge your existing beliefs or behaviors. And we see this very prominently when it comes to religion, spirituality, where it comes to either adopting beliefs of others or you seeking out the information in order to form what you believe, and also to challenging what beliefs that you did adopt that were in place from very young. That can definitely alter someone's reality and kind of like shift their identity too. Another one is anxiety of uncertainty. Woo, right there. The anxiety one definitely gets me because it's the disruption of comfort and stability. You not knowing what the outcome is going to be, whether that's you trying to avoid confrontation of an uncomfortable conversation, avoid conflict when it comes with others. Just the anxiety doesn't help when it comes to finding out like what is going on. So social and developmental factors shaping us when we were young, with our parents, with our siblings, other family members, our peers, because our culture perpetuates productivity over introspection, right? So for an example, when we were young in school, we are more praised for having the right answer instead of a more thoughtful question. And that's where I love when people say no question's a silly question, because to be honest, there's not. A question that may be silly to you because you know it or because it's just common sense could not be common sense for someone else, or it could not be something that they know. Also, too, working a job that has a lot of responsibilities can hinder the exploration of trying to find a way to do things better or more efficiently, because you have so much responsibility that it's hard to mentally think with curiosity, because there's just so much workload, and the responsibility that comes from your work is already mentally taxing. So it's like the last thing you want to do is just think of like curiosity questions that trigger critical thinking and more problem solving when you feel like you're already problem solving with a task that is at hand, because you're just thinking like, this is just how it's been done, like this is how I was told to do it, this is how my boss's boss told me how to do it, and this is what is expected out of me, these are the requirements for the job. It'd be hard to explore what may not be necessarily in your job description. Big one is fear of rejection, fear of social rejection, which adds to anxiety. feeling stuck without knowing why necessarily, which then could lead to missed opportunities for personal growth when it just comes to self-development, your relationships with others, your work, your school. So no, I said a lot of things when it comes to the psychological aspect and also sociological aspects when it comes to asking why, the importance of it, and also to the lifelong consequences and implications it has when we don't ask why, and how that can show up both for our individual selves and also too in society. Again, it's important to note that psychology and sociology, they intertwine. They literally go hand in hand. So what is the big picture? Like, what is the big takeaway of why we need to ask why? And why is it so important to ask curious questions and to ask why? It aids to our personal growth. Hello. We all here to do this. Isn't that like our most of our, missions in this world, and our purpose in this world is to just become a better human every single day and in this lifetime, so that way we can impact others in their lifetime and maybe pass it on for generations. That's just a personal opinion. One of the biggest differences between growth and stagnation isn't how smart someone is, or isn't their IQ or their intelligence, but it's whether or not we're continuing to ask ourselves why and others why. So keep this in mind. Children question the world, and adults who are on a mission to continue to grow in life question themselves. With that being said, like, comment, and subscribe. I hope that this was very concise. This will be like my second topic video, and there was some research that was done, some scripting that was done to give this information cohesively and effectively when it comes to breaking down psychological aspects and also to sociological aspects. And I know it could be a lot of information, so if you guys have any feedback of how I could better improve certain things, or something that I may have missed, just any feedback, definitely let me know down in the comments. And also too, I challenge all of you all whether that is to leave a comment in the comment section, whether that is to look at yourself in the mirror tonight or eventually, or even to journal. What why question, right? Have you been avoiding asking yourself or someone else? But until next time, let's talk about it, love, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye bye.